All right, all right. Welcome back to Relationships Unfiltered, a podcast about relationships, love, lifestyle, passion, sex, and a whole bunch more. I'm your host here, Rashad Bakir, and thank you for tuning in. Just to remind those folks. And today's program, I'm going to be talking about a topic that I posed in my Instagram and social media with regard to what is your peak age in the dating scene. And I've talked to a lot of people, heard from a lot of people. So, as always, I like to give you the data on what folks are saying about where they feel they are in terms of the question of what is your peak age or what's the peak age for the dating scene. And the responses are ranging from different ages, of course, depending on where you're at. And of course, it's going to favor on the younger side. So let me get right into it. For the women, the ages tend to go from 25 to 35, generally speaking. This is not just women within that age group, but also women older than that age group that I've spoke with and heard from and so forth. So they obviously now the things that you can look at with that are a few things for a woman. First, where she's at in life. If she's working, she's in school, in a relationship, and so forth. So that's kind of like number one thing that sort of fits into that window. The other thing is that I have for that is for her being out in the dating market. That is the prime group to which she is competing. So, for a guy or a girl, whoever she want to be with in a relationship, mind you, and so that's a prime dating market, eligible, and so forth. And then behind that, you have marriage, of course. So marriage, and then the third thing fourth thing would be biological, to starting a family and all that kind of thing. So those are some of the responses relative to why that age group was the preferred peak age for a woman, which in most people's common sense mind makes sense to that. However, there were liars to that. There were folks who felt like it being in your 40s is your peak age. That was another one. And another surprising one, or not so surprising, is the fact that many people said, whatever age you feel you're at your peak, that is the age that you're at your peak. But in the dating scene, it's a different. It's one thing to ask it in the sense of what's your peak age in life in general. But it's another to ask what's your peak age in terms of eligibility, markability in the dating scene, the dating market. Those are two different types of questions. What my question was centered on is the second one, the dating market. What's your value to that, which I have talked about? And so, of course, when you're younger, in your peak, in your youth, in a period of life where you have more energy, more zest, more, again, your physical attraction, along with probably personality and other things, stands out. And so obviously that fits into how people view, how people think of themselves as far as their peak age, with their vitality and, physical appearance and attractiveness in the dating scene, the dating market, particularly with women. Okay. Because as we know, as women age, and particularly as they go into their 30s and cross that threshold of 35, which is the general right around the general age of medium of what's middle age. So then women start to think a little bit more with that biological clock. They think of themselves as aging, as still being single. Okay, as still being single, because as you go up the age ladder, then there's less eligible partners for you, generally speaking, to find and to put yourself in a position to meet someone, and so forth and so on with that. So, so peak age in the dating market is if it's between this 25 to 35. Do the results reflect that? I'm going to come back to that because I got to get to the men first, to the second, excuse me. Let's look at that. Now, with the men, the age range of peak seemed to go a lot wider in the gap. So 25 to 35 for women, 25 to 45 for men. So a 10-year difference, which makes that a 20-year gap versus a 10-year gap. That's correct. Yeah. So in the men versus with the women, okay, 10-year difference, 35 to 45. And so obviously men, now when it comes to how men view themselves, if this peak age, physically, they again tend to go with the younger in terms of being established in career, finance, which is very important because those saying, no finance, no romance kind of thing. So, so that seemed to go with the more 40, 45 group. With the younger group, it's more about how their appearance is. Again, single to mingle, you're young, you can be on the dating scene, and you're looking for that baddie. You're looking for the trophy wife. You're looking for that one, and so forth. When you're in the 20s, dating, and so forth. So that's sort of like a snippet of what men tend to view as far as peak age that I talk to. Okay, and I will continue to talk to folks and get further viewpoints. But in a nutshell, that seems to be the range for which I found as a common denominator in talking to dozens and dozens of people over again with regard to where do they see the peak age in the dating market. Now, again, let me go back to what I mentioned about some things that are factored into this, because being out there, like I said, in the dating market, there's a small window. Is it cracked up is the results producing what it's cracked up to be? And right now there appears to be, okay, if you listen to all the talking heads out here, a crisis in the dating scene. Okay, a crisis of which the people are sort of burnt out using the apps and being on dating sites. Men are withdrawing from approaching women. Women are feeling more independent and bringing what is perceived as masculine energy upon men, challenging them in a sense, being more authoritative, controlling. Okay, these are my observations, and so that has flipped it in terms like, okay, if this is the peak age, is that producing the results of people coming together? Well, apparently not, as I'm stating, based upon what's on the ground, based upon what's in the reality of the dating spaces when I'm talking to people, especially when I'm talking to couples. Almost, it's near unanimous as far as like the couples that I meet who say they would not like to be out in the dating market in this current dating climate. Okay, almost to the person. I hear that over and over again, especially with couples who've been together for a long time. I'm talking about 20 years or so. They emphatically would not like to be out here in this dating climate today. And people who are even single don't like to be out in this dating because it's a total different animal right now. And so even though like I said, in response to my question about what's the peak age, that peak age is not producing on the surface to what you might think the results that people are meeting their match, okay, in the dating market. So being young and single to mingle does not automatically guarantee you anything. You're single to mingle, and you can have your ideal of fun, and if you want to date, it's not all that you think it is. And that goes across the board. That's not just for the average looking folks. That's for the hot looking folks, the baddies out there, the very good looking, self-described good looking people, and all that on the average. So there's some telltale things that we need to kind of look at, especially folks who are single out there looking for somebody, to factor in as it comes to the age. Now, why does all this matter? Well, because again, when you're on these apps, most of these apps are geared towards younger people. Okay. So now because we deal with ageism in dating in a sense of the fact that people are trying to look very youthful. Okay. Especially women with using a lot of aesthetics, and so forth to give off the appearance that they're younger, with anti-aging products, let's say, and so forth, and all the other stuff that they do to again give off a very youthful appearance of themselves. And you see that reflected in the dating. My other podcast where I talk about those dating results and what folks are looking for and all that other stuff, be sure to watch that one, because I break that down and as regard to age and so forth. So that's a key element in this whole ball game, because it starts off again, what's your peak age? When we're talking about peak age and so forth, but does that peak age produce the results? And apparently it does not. But let me hear what you have to say about that. Tune in, and we're going to check with you next time on Relationships Unfiltered. Have a good one out there. Okay.